Okay, my name is Tupac Shakur, and I attend Tamalpais High School, and I'm 17 years old.
Please welcome Tupac Shakur.
Tupac Shakur.
Rap artist Tupac Shakur.
Tell me, what does Tupac Amaru Shakur mean?
Okay, it means, I was named after this Inca chief from South America whose name was Tupac Amaru.
Please welcome a very streetwise young man who wants to make a difference for all black people. How are you? Wow. Tupac Shakur.
I get a feeling there are two Tupacs. I mean, you're this kind, sensitive, friendly guy.
Naughty smelling guy.
Yet, you're involved in so much controversy.
Alright, so this really wasn't the setup I was expecting. I wanted the camera to be more censored, but then I looked like a burnt out Blackberry. Y'all couldn't really see me, so, you know, we just gonna make this work. Anywho, welcome to Friday Night Crimes, bitch. Well, Friday Night Crimes is a new series I'm starting. It's a celebrity true crime segment. We will be talking about celebrities such as Tupac, Biggie, XXXTentacion, Brittany Murphy, Marilyn Monroe. We're just gonna really see how this goes. If it's successful, we might switch out to regular true crime. I don't really do true crime videos. I'm usually watching them or doing them. This is the first time I'm doing a video like this, and I'm all big on educate me. If I do something y'all ain't like, feel free to comment down below. Please educate me, do not belittle me. And if y'all remembered, I used to be doing my story times in my bonnets and PJs, so I'm all about being raw and comfortable on my page. So go ahead, grab your bonnets, grab your do-rags, grab your pajamas, grab your cup of wines, and let's enjoy this story of a legend.
I always wanted people to understand that Tupac was an artist, and I always wanted them to appreciate him as an artist, as a true artist, and to appreciate all of his work rather than to pick and choose lines from somebody's work that was so massive. I think the most important thing for me is that people today view him as an artist, as a complete artist, and as a humanitarian, and as a person who felt other people's pain. That, as a mother, I don't think that I could ask for anything more.
Let's go ahead and start this off with Afeni Shakur Davis. Now, Afeni was a bit of a badass. She was born Alice Faye Williams on January 22nd, 1947 in Bloomington, North Carolina. Now, she grew up in a home with her mother, Rosabelle, her abusive father, Walter Williams Jr., and her sister. Eventually, in 1958, when she turned 11 years old, her mother, and her sister moved to the Bronx, New York without her father to live a new life. First, she attended the Bronx High School of Science, but eventually she would be more involved with the street life and started her long struggle with crack addiction at just the age of 15 years old. And it's really just crazy to think how like accessible that shit was, especially to a minor. It's just kind of like scary and fucked up, but she's a trooper. Now, she, along with several Tupac's family members, including his step-aunt, his father, and his godfather, joined the Black Panther movement. Now, she joined the party back in 1964 when an associate of Malcolm X was recruiting in the streets of Bronx, New York. In the party, she wrote for the newsletter called Panther Post. She also led a campaign to mislead FBI agents. So I don't know if you guys seen Judas and the Black Messiah, but there were a lot of FBI agents undercover to destroy the Black Panther Party because it was seen as a threat. So she was in charge of leading a campaign to help mislead the FBI agents to kind of make them think that the party was disintegrating. She also mentored new upcoming members of the party, and she would eventually lead the Harlem chapter of the Black Panther Party. Now, in 1968, she became involved with a member, I am sorry if I say this name wrong, but Lumbumba Abdul Shakur. A lot of reports say that she married Lumbumba, but Tupac himself actually said in an interview that she never married him and she was just living her best life as she should. Now, after she met Lumbumba Shakur, this is when she changed her name from Alice Faye Williams to Afeni Shakur Davis. Afeni meaning lover of the people in Yoruba, Shakur meaning thankful in Arabic. In 1969, her and 20 other Panthers were arrested in the famous Panther 21 case. All the Panthers involved in this case were charged with over 150 charges of different acts of conspiracy because they were supposedly planning on bombing several police stations and other public places throughout New York City. Afeni Afeni was one of 2 Panthers who were bailed out on $100,000 bond in order for them to raise money for the other Panthers involved in the case. Now, while she was on bail, she was still living her best life, and this is where she would actually become impregnated with Tupac Shakur. She got pregnant with Tupac's biological father, William Garland. However, she was also involved with someone named Legs, who was an associate to drug lord Nicky Barnes. Now, Tupac believed that Legs was his father for a very long time. Legs eventually died of a cocaine overdose, so Tupac grew up thinking that his father died a long time ago due to drugs, but he would later realize that William Garland was his actual father when he was 23 years old the first time that he got shot.
My father was a hustler, street hustler, you know. I think he, you know, sold drugs and everything, and how did they get together is beyond me, but he just saw her as a woman doing something, and like, you know. But so my mother and father both had bad childhoods, and I never knew who my father was. I met him, but he died, and that was horrible, but got over that.
Did you know who the father was, your biological father?
I still don't know who it is, for sure. I've never taken any blood tests. The guy who I knew was my father, who claimed to be my father, he passed away, he died.
And is that Legs?
Yes, but then recently after I got shot, this other guy came and was like, he was my father, and he looks like me. He been in the jail to see me. His kids look like me.
Well, what was that like?
That was the bug out. I just woke up and he was standing over me. I thought my father was dead for all my life, really? Except after I got shot, I looked up and there was this nigga that looked dead on me, and he was my father, so I found out. We still ain't taking no blood test, but I mean, the nigga looked like me, and then the other nigga is dead. So to me, it's like I'm past the father thing. You know what I mean? But I do want to know him, and I do know him. We do talk, and he did help me while I was locked down. He did come visit me, and it's all love. But I'm past that.
But William Garland lost touch with his mother at the age of 5. Eventually, she told Lumbamba that the baby wasn't his, and their relationship was over at this point. Afeni would later actually marry Lumbamba's adopted brother, named Mutulu, but eventually they would separate as well, and Mutulu actually got sentenced to 60 years in prison for conspiring against the government, which he has always maintained his innocence, on top of Legs dying of a cocaine overdose, on top of William Garland not being in Tupac's life, and Lumbamba being separated from Afeni. She really was a single mother, and Pac had a lack of a father figure in his life.
The only reason I'm losing is because I never had a daddy. I never had nobody to sit me down and tell me this. You know what I'm saying? They told me, but I didn't believe it because they left my mama cracked. I'm telling y'all the truth, as much as you heard me, cracked out, homeless, no life in Baltimore. And my mother put motherfucking work in. Do you hear me? My mama was a gun packing. What I'm talking about for you, motherfucker, excuse me, but my mama put in work, you know, to be laying up in a room cracked out. I got disdain for a lot of motherfuckers, you feel me? And that's why I'm telling y'all, I got to be serious. If we don't struggle, the struggle got to come from our heart.
Had I had a father, had I had someone, and I hate saying this because white people love hearing black people talk about this, but had I had a father, had I had some of these opportunities, I'd have been able to help my mother more. She wouldn't have went the road she went. I could have been a better son. You know what I'm saying? She wouldn't have went that road. It was the absence of my father. You know what I'm saying? I'm dealing with him being daddy not being there. My mother's dealing with him being my man not being there. You know, so many problems in our community that affect everything.
Now, shortly after she was out on bond, bail was actually revoked and she was back in prison. For a majority of her pregnancy with Tupac, she was in jail, which is why Tupac will say before he was even born, he was in jail. Now, the Panthers were awaiting trial for a total of 2 years before it actually started on September 8th, 1970. Now, Afeni was facing a 300-year sentence, being charged with over 156 counts of, and this is why I don't trust the justice system, but she was facing charges of conspiracy to bomb buildings, attempted murder, conspiracy, and conspiracy to attempt murder. If you already got me for conspiracy and you already got me for murder, then why charge me with conspiracy to attempt murder? You see how they just... Now again, Afeni was a badass. With no prior legal experience, she represented herself in court while she was pregnant. So she cross-examined the undercover FBI agents, she interviewed witnesses, and she argued in court, all while she was pregnant. 8 months after the trial began, in May 1971, all charges were dropped against all of the 21 Panthers. They were acquitted due to the fact that the case was seen as an FBI attempt to neutralize the party, which it was. 1 month later, after charges were dropped, in in June 16, 1971, she gave birth to Lassane Parrish Crooks. And I know some of y'all are like, Lassane Parrish Crooks? Ooh, Tupac was born Lassane Parrish Crooks, but eventually she would change her name to Tupac Amaru Shakur. So the literal translation of this is Shining Serpent, but she would name him after an Inca leader, Tupac, who was executed after unsuccessfully leading a rebellion to prove the rights of Peruvians under Spanish rule. Now before we go into Tupac, a little bit more about Afeni's life after the case. She worked as a paralegal for over 10 years at the Bronx Legal Services, as she should, because I mean she was one of the main reasons why the Panther 21 case was dropped and all of the Panthers were acquitted. But nonetheless, she did struggle as a single mother, and this plays a role into why Tupac describes his childhood as something that was difficult.
My mother had a really bad childhood, and my father had a bad childhood, and I had a bad childhood, but I love my childhood.
Is it true that you were born in prison?
Not born in prison. My mother was pregnant with me while she was in prison, and a month after she got out of prison, she gave birth to me.
How would you describe what it was like growing up?
I was the total opposite of what I am right now. I was quiet, withdrawn, I read a lot, I wrote poetry, I kept a diary, I watched TV all the time, I stayed in front of a television, I went to movies, everything.
But let me tell you where I ended up, y'all. Let me tell you where I ended up. My mother was a crack addict. I ended up in Baltimore on welfare with no lights on in high school. So we got to really watch this struggle shit. If we gonna struggle, we gotta struggle every motherfucking day till this shit is over. Let them know, bro.
Even though it was bad, I love it. I feel like it's taught me so much. And I feel like nothing can faze me. You know, nothing in this world, nothing can surprise me. It might set me back, but only momentarily, only to spring back. And I think it's helped me to learn. It really did help me to learn. And since my mother had a bad childhood, she knows the importance of being honest and the importance of facing each situation as it comes and not dealing in fairy tale land, being realistic about the problem and analyzing it and solving it. My mother was a Black Panther, and she was really involved in the movement, you know, just Black people bettering themselves and things like that. First I rebelled against her because she was in the movement and we never spent time together because she was always speaking and going to colleges and everything. And then after that was over, it was more time spent with me and both just like, you're my mother, and she was like, you're my son, and what do we do? So then she was really close with me and really strict almost. But now I can see how it paid off because like I could talk to my mother about drugs, I could talk to my mother about sex, anything. I can ask her anything and bring it up and she'll go, okay, well this is...
Now for much of his childhood, Tupac Shakur struggled alongside of his mother, Afeni, and his... and his sister. They were going back and forth living in the Bronx and in Harlem and even sleeping in homeless shelters. At the age of 12, he enrolled in Harlem's 127th Street Ensemble, where he landed his first major role as Travis in A Raisin in the Sun at the Apollo Theater. This is one of the things that Tupac and Afeni explains that really kind of saved his life, especially during the rough times that they were facing. Now at age 15 in 1986, Afeni, Tupac, and his sister moved to Baltimore, Maryland on Greenmount Avenue. In his sophomore year of high school, he was actually accepted to the Baltimore School for the Arts, where his creativity would flourish, and he met his close friend Jada Pinkett Smith. So in this school, Tupac was writing, he was doing poetry, acting, theater, performing in Shakespearean plays. He even did ballet, music, jazz, and of course, writing raps. Now we already know that Tupac is pretty revolutionary, and he was also an activist just like his mother. But he was really acting on his activist beliefs at even such a young age. Like, it's really crazy to hear him speak at just 17 years old. But in Maryland, he actually started 3 different campaigns: Stop the Killing, Safe Sex, and even AIDS prevention. Like, can you guys really imagine a 17-year-old boy coming up to you talking about safe sex? That's really some admirable shit.
I spent 3 years in Baltimore, my high school years, going to the School of Performing Arts. Then, before that, I was in New York. That's where I grew up. That was my total growing up part. We moved out of New York because because of my mother's choices, you know, and she couldn't keep her job because of her choices, because it was too much. Yeah, no, she was calm now. I mean, it was totally calm, but it was like they figured out who she was, and she couldn't keep her job. That should be illegal. So she lost her job, and of course we were like stranded in New York, and yeah, so we were stranded in New York. So we moved to Baltimore has the highest rate of teenage pregnancy, the highest rate of AIDS within the black community, the highest rate of teens killing teens, and the highest rate of teenage suicide, and the highest rate of blacks killing blacks. So as soon as I got there, being the person I am, I said, no, I'm changing this. So I started a Stop the Killing campaign, and safe sex campaign, and AIDS prevention campaign, and everything.
And in Maryland, he also wrote a few of his first rap under the stage name of MC New York. He even produced a song from one of his close friends who actually helped him on one of these campaigns, who later fatally died from gun violence 2 weeks after he moved to California.
And then I came back, and I felt like I did a lot of good. I did good things and everything. Came back. The second week I was in California, I got a call, and 2 of my friends were shot dead in the head. 2 of the friends that were working with me shot dead in the head. And it's just like, why try? Because this is what happens. But I still try.
He even began his own Black Panther party.
There was a fight at the party. And I was like, what happened? He said the skinheads came and called the black people niggas and made them, said they had to leave. And of course, there was fight. I was like, oh my God. So we were sitting there, they went home, we were sitting there talking and everything. And my friends just like, this couldn't happen in the 60s, you know, let's figure out what to do. And he just said, I know, we'll start the Black Panthers again. So we started the Black Panthers, but we're doing it more to fit our views, you know, less violent and more silent, you know, more knowledge to help. You know, what we really want to do is get the pride back in the black community, because I feel like if you can't respect yourself, then you can't respect your race, then you can't respect another's race, then you can't respect, you know, it just has to do with respect, like my mother taught me. So what we're doing is starting the Black Panthers again in Marin City, just getting first teaching pride, and then teaching education, and then we'll see where it goes from there. And also as a defense mechanism for the skinheads, because that's wrong, and I hate to feel helpless. And I want to take, you know, I just want to learn from my mistakes. And I'm talking to a lot of the ex-members of the Panthers from the 60s, and they're helping me because they're less violent. They're, you know, they've learned. So, and they did a lot of good things in the past, and we can do a lot of good things.
This just goes to say that he always wanted to help and give back to his community and unite it, even at a young age, and then later on going into his adulthood. Before he passed away, he talked about actually wanting to create a rule of ethics for gangs in the streets, and also using gangs as a form of security for the neighborhood. He also talked about creating different organizations and campaigns just for a means to provide education and healthcare to poor people of color. So in 1988, at age 17, him and his sister moved to Marion City, California, due to his mother being heavily addicted to crack in the mid-1980s. At this point in time, Afeni was also having a hard time finding work, not only because of her addiction, but because of who she was as a Black Panther. So it was hard for her to find a job, and she was using welfare payments to help take care of her kids. So he and his sister went to Marine City, California, where he attended
Tampapai High School.
And he also joined the Ensemble Theater Company to pursue his career in entertainment and acted in many theater productions. Now eventually he would drop out of high school before he could even graduate, but shortly after begin his life hustling in the street. For a period of time, he was also living with his artist mentor and the first manager, Layla Steinberg, and they met back in spring 1989 in one of her writing workshops called the Microphone Sessions, and she would encourage him to read and write more. And Tupac was described by many teachers as well-read and intellectually well-rounded, at a level of an average freshman in most Ivy League colleges. Now when Tupac was selling and hustling in the streets, he eventually made friends with Ray Love and DJ Dizzy, and they started a group named Strictly Dope. That's kind of dope though. Their recordings were later released under Tupac Shakur, The Lost Tape. But they would perform around the neighborhood and do concerts, and eventually this would lead to Tupac's 5-year rap career. So in 1989, Layla actually organized a concert for the group, and she was able to introduce them to Atron Gregory, who would then set him up with Shock G. Now Shock G was the head person of Digital Underground, which is described to be an alternative rap group, alternative meaning not mainstream. And what was interesting about this group was that they would change their personnel and rotated each album and tour. So Tupac explains that Shock G actually hired him on the spot after Tupac walked into the studio and started doing his thing. And then he was hired as a backup dancer and a roadie. Roadie, for those of you guys who don't know, is someone who, you know, is on the road. And it's like, you wouldn't think that that's something that's helpful, but it definitely is, especially in the music industry, to work your way up. So just being on the road, on the bus tours with them as they're traveling is fucking dope. strictly dope. Digital Underground was literally the start to Tupac's short-lived rap career. His career began in the early 1990s when he released Same Song from the Digital Underground album. This is an EP release. I love their fucking rap group names, their album names, because it's just so like straightforward, but also kind of dope at the same time. Like, they literally released an album called This is an EP album. Bitch. And he would later perform with the group again on the Sons of the P album before releasing his solo debut, Tupacalypse Now. The Tupacalypse album were known for its social commentary songs such as Brenda Got a Baby, and it really established him in the rap industry. And later on that same year, in 1991, that album went gold for over 500,000 sales. But nonetheless, it was still criticized for its inappropriate language and the inappropriate violence depicted by and from law enforcement. Somebody actually killed a state trooper, and their lawyer wanted them to say that it was because of the album Tupacalypse Now that influenced him to do the killing. I don't know, it's just like I get that movies and songs play a part in how some people act dumb, but it's just like at the end of the day, you know, you decided to act dumb on your own. And Vice President Dan Quayle actually publicly denounced the album during the 1992 presidential campaign.
There is absolutely no reason for a record like this to be published by a responsible corporation. Today, I am suggesting that Time Warner's a subsidiary, Interscope Records, withdraw this record. It has no place in our society.
Texas trooper Bill Davidson was gunned down here about 100 miles outside of Houston. The man who admits to killing him is Ronald Howard. District Attorney Bobby Bell claims that Howard told him the rap music was a factor.
He specifically criticized the song Soulja Story and said it had no place in society. I think that an album talking about the struggles of a young black man in America has every place in society. Now, the album didn't do as well as his future albums, but it definitely landed him a role in the industry. And around this time in 1991, he actually faced police brutality himself while he was jaywalking and would file a report against the Oakland Police Department. Later on in 1992, he was casted to play the antagonist in the movie Juice, a crime drama featuring Omar Epps, Samuel Jackson, and Queen Latifah. 1 year later, in 1993, he would star in Poetic Justice, a romance drama featuring Janet Jackson, and released his second album, Strictly for My Niggas. This album went platinum and produced his two major hits, I Get Around and Keep Your Head Up. Gonna keep your head up, ooh, child. Both of these songs peaked at number 11 and 12 in the pop chart, and the album itself hit number 4 on R&B charts. In that same year, he formed a group called Thug Life. He formed this group with a few of his friends and his stepbrother Marion Suge Knight, and they released their first and only album. Guess what it's called? Thug Life Volume 1. On September 1994, this album went certified gold, selling over 500,000 sales. Now, Thug Life isn't just, you know, Thug Life. It was actually an acronym that stood for The Hate You Give Little Infants Fucks Everybody.
H-U-G-L-I-F-E. The hate you gave little infants, U-C-K, everybody. Meaning, what you feed us as seeds grows and blows up in your face. That's Thug Life.
They're scared. They're scared of watching us grow up. A lot of children are growing up lost in the sauce, and I think that they're scared because they're realizing it now that I didn't teach him this, I didn't teach him that.
So being a thug isn't just being in the streets and yelling gang gang gang, you know, but it's actually making something out of yourself from coming from a struggling background. If you raise somebody in a fucked up negative environment, it's gonna come and bite you in the ass, whether it fucks you over or it fucks society over. Now, oddly enough, Tupac actually did not have a record until he got into the industry and started professionally rapping.
This is all I want to say. For all them people that doubt me, I had no record all my life. Okay? No record, no police record, until I made a record. All of a sudden, I had all kind of legal problems. And you have to think about this. I had a clean record for 20 years. A clean record, living in the ghetto, in the gutter, no record. As my video was debuting on MTV, I was behind bars getting beat up by the police department. I got a $10 million lawsuit. They said they would settle with me and everything. You know what I'm saying? But nobody cared about that. That wasn't blew up all in the news. They didn't see me. They did not see me on TV with my eye busted, my head busted. There's pictures of those. What about my morals then? What about my character then? You know what I'm saying? In 2 years that I start raising noise, that I start being publicly viewed, I've had a record. And now it looks like I'm a criminal who has no way of being reformed. You don't see pictures of the police standing over me beating my brains in. You don't see that. But I see that. That's what I see. But all of these came one after the other. Do you understand? Right. It takes logic. You know what I'm saying? So it's all real. And I feel like just like a woman that's raped, any woman that's raped would never, ever allow herself to be raped again. Am I correct? Any woman that's violated would never allow herself to be violated again. Same thing.
You know there are going to be people who sit here and say, how can you say that when you're faced with that charge?
That's how I can say it. We got people in my own community that will get me. Why? Because I got it.
So even though he was starring in films and selling records, he was actually starting to begin a police record. By the age of just 20, he was arrested 8 times and served 8 months and was actually the subject of 2 wrongful death lawsuits. One including a 6-year-old boy who got caught up in crossfire between Pac's group and another rival gang. 3 of these charges includes in late 1993, while he was filming Menace to Society, he actually assaulted the director Alan Hughes and was sentenced to 15 days in jail. In October 1993, he shot at 2 off-duty police officers who he claimed to be were harassing a black motorcyclist, but the charges against him were dropped when it was found that the 2 police officers who were off-duty were actually intoxicated, which makes me believe more so that this probably did happen and they were harassing this black motorcyclist, because I mean, why would any black man on top of that just shoot at 2 police officers for no reason? Now in 1994, he and 3 of his entourage were convicted for allegedly sexually assaulting a woman in a hotel by the name of Ayanna Jackson. She says the first day she was at hotel, they engaged in consensual sexual activities, oral sex. Don't ask me who gave what to who, gave what to where to who, I don't fucking know. But the second day that she came back is when she alleges that this was non-consensual sex. However, Tupac does maintain his innocence and he never revealed who this lady was at the time before she came out and spoke her own story. But he did say, like, if anybody wants to know who I was talking about, it would be like, oh, like, I know who you're talking about. This is probably something that has happened before.
Any woman that's violated would never allow herself to be violated again. Same thing.
You know there are going to be people who sit here and say, how can you say that when you're faced with that charge?
That's how I can say it. We got people in my own community that will get me. Why? Because I got it. Now this girl, who I can't say her name, but if I was to say her name, 1,000 all over the world would go, I put this on everything I love, on everything I love. When I was in Atlanta, I was pulled over at the gas station. Some dudes from New York pulled over next to me and told me the girl's name. They said, I know the girl that did it. They told me her name and where she's from, say she's scandalous. I can't go on TV talking about this girl, because that's what they want me to do. They want me to get on TV and talk about my black sister is a hoe, and she's a bitch, and she's a money grubber. I ain't fit to say that. I don't have to do that to show that I'm innocent. You know what I'm saying? I'm not guilty. People should look me in my eyes. They should look me in my eyes. And anybody that thinks I committed that rape should go get Brenda's Got a Baby and keep your head up and listen to him thoroughly. I have no patience for anybody that doubts me. None at all. It's too hard out here. You know what I'm saying? If my people don't stand up for me, who is? I understand these white folks looking at me like that because they don't know me. They didn't hear keep your head up. That ain't no fluke. You know, keep your head up ain't no goddamn come up. I didn't do that for to be smiling in my face to say, oh, he's cool. I did that from my heart. So that if they do try to put a rape charge on me, my sisters could say he ain't about that. Now, if my sisters can't say that, you won't hear another keep your head up out my mouth. You understand me? Because it's a struggle on young black men.
He was just very, very fucking respectful. Like, you even have somebody who, according to him, was wrongfully convicting you of sexual assault, and he still did not disrespect her. And I think we will never find another man like Tupac, seriously. Now, the night before the verdict of the sexual assault case, on November 30th, 1994, Tupac was shot 5 times and robbed after entering the Quad Recording Studios in Manhattan, New York. Pac accused Sean Combs, Andre Harrell, Randy Stretch Walker, who was a close friend and associate of Tupac, and he even accused Biggie Smalls of setting him up. He was actually shot by 3 unknown assailants, and he was shot 5 times, receiving some wounds to the head, the groin, the arm, and the thigh. He had to undergo surgery for the wound that he received in his groin, but 3 hours after surgery, against doctor's orders, Tupac got into a wheelchair and rolled out of that bitch, because the next day he had to go to the courthouse and receive his sentence. Tupac was found guilty on 3 counts of molestation, one of them including, you know, just him grabbing her butt, I believe, but he was found innocent on 6 others. And then he was sentenced to 1.5 to 4.5 years in prison, which is crazy to think that if he stayed in jail for 4.5 years, he probably wouldn't have gotten shot the day that he got shot in the drive-by shooting. Now, exactly 1 year after the shooting incident happened in 1994, Stretch was murdered execution style in Queens. Now, Pac began his sentence at the Clinton Correctional Facility on Valentine's Day 1995. This is where he would release his multi-platinum album Me Against the World, and he was the only artist to have an album at #1 on Billboard 200 while serving a sentence in prison. And it stayed at the top of the charts for 5 weeks, so over a month. And he sold over 240,000 sales the first week, hitting another record. While he was in jail, he also married his longtime girlfriend at the time, Keisha Morris, which was later annulled. And he wrote a screenplay called Live to Tell, which was about a teen who actually became a drug lord. While in jail, he also read a lot of philosophical books by, and I know I'm going to say this name wrong, but it's Niccolo Machiavelli. And then this is where he created his pseudonym Machiavelli, and would later drop an album based off of this after he passed away. Now, Tupac only served 8 months of this 1.5 to 4.5 year sentence due to his case being on appeal. After 78 months, he actually told his girlfriend Keisha to reach out to Marion Suge Knight, who was the CEO of Death Row Records, to kind of help him out, because at this point his mother was on the edge of losing her house and he wasn't able to provide for her due to legal fees. He actually posted his bail of $1.4 million. In exchange for that, Tupac makes 3 albums under the record label. And this is where Pac would release his iconic album in hip-hop history, All Eyes on Me, which debuted at #1 as soon as it came out. It came out in February, and by that upcoming fall, he made quintuple platinum. Quintuple, which I didn't even know that was a word until I researched this. This was actually the last album he produced before he died, and the first double disc album that was out there. And this album was famous for the song Cali Love with Dr. Dre and How Do You Want It. But after this, he wanted to focus more on his acting career instead of his music career, which is understandable because he always had this love for acting on the side as well. And like a lot of music artists, he was having some issues with the label as far as him putting in overtime for them but not really seeing the money.
He absolutely thought he was quite rich and that his family would, you know, be rich forever. Please remember that my great-grandmother was a slave. My grandmother was a sharecropper. My mother was a factory worker, and I was a legal worker. Do you understand? And so this represents the first time in our life, in our memory ever, that we have been able to enjoy the American dream, and that's what Tupac brought to his family. I discovered he had next to zero, next to nothing. I discovered that the home that he had thought that he had just bought was not his.
I know business. I know how to take my artists and make them superstar status and make them get what they deserve.
The entertainment business is a business of prostitution and thievery, and that was rampant around my son's talent.
He wanted to sign somewhere else, and he actually wanted to start his own record label called Machiavelli Records, based off of the pseudonym that he made for himself back in prison. And I'm just thinking, like, it really would have been fucking iconic and historical had he actually gotten the chance to make his own record label. But his problems with Death Row Records continued on after his death, to the point where his mother was still fighting to earn his masters. So you can just see that the music industry is literally another form of a game. Once you get in it, it's hard to get out, and they're literally taking your shit and taking your money. Now, during the summer of 1996, he would perform and act in his last 2 movies, one being Bullet, which was a thriller, and Gridlocked, which was a dark comedy. Regardless of this, he still was making records for Death Row, but it didn't get anywhere because Dr. Dre wasn't the head producer, and Suge was involved in a lot of legal trouble. And going back to his pseudonym Machiavelli, he produced the album Don Killamati, The 7-Day Theory, and it was called The 7-Day Theory because it took him 3 days to write the songs and 4 days to produce it. And luckily he was alive to be able to have creative control over the album cover. And the album cover is kind of self-explanatory, but it's just him being crucified in the media for his music. This sold 663,000 records in the first week, and again he had plans for opening up Machiavelli Records, which would have been strictly dope. Like, imagine all the artists he would have probably pulled off the streets, you know? Like, it's just crazy to think that this guy really would have just had a fucking big impact. But of course, it's the ones who would have made a difference, who've been literally shot, killed, assassinated, and so forth. Now let's go ahead and talk about the night of the tragic murder of Tupac Amaru Shakur. This took place in Las Vegas, Nevada. The crazy thing is, he actually didn't want to go to Las Vegas. He actually planned to go to Atlanta to deal with some personal issues that he had with his relative. But Suge persuaded him to go to Las Vegas, and he had more things to discuss with him in terms of the label. And while in Vegas, he was also celebrating Tracy Danielle Robson's birthday, who was one of his business partners. So that was probably another reason for him deciding to go to Las Vegas last minute. Now on September 7th, 1996, he attended the Mike Tyson and Bruce Seldon match at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, Nevada. After leaving the event, one of Knight's associates actually pointed somebody out in the lobby to Tupac. This is where he spotted Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, who was a member of the Southside Crips, a rival gang. Tupac actually rushed Baby Lane and so did the rest of their entourage. Basically, they jumped him, and this was actually caught on video surveillance. So a few weeks prior to this, Baby Lane and a few members of the Crip gang actually robbed a member of one of the Death Row members' entourage in a Foot Locker store. So this wasn't just a random jumping. They actually, I guess, were getting him back for what they did a few weeks prior. Pac and Knight were on the way to Club 662, which was actually owned back then by Death Row Records. Tupac was riding in 1996 black BMW 750i sedan. Usually they had armed bodyguards who rode alongside Tupac, but the bodyguards actually were unarmed, and one of the bodyguards that were there that night said that Tupac wanted him to ride in a separate car. He wanted the bodyguard to follow their sedan in Kidada Jones's car, just in the case that Tupac got too intoxicated, so there were extra cars, you know, for whenever they were exiting the club. Now at 10:55 p.m., Tupac rolled down his window at a red light, and a photographer captured this photo right before the incident happened. At 11 to 11:05 p.m., the car was stopped by bicycle cops for playing their music too loud and not having their license plates installed. Their plate was actually in the trunk of their car. At 11:10 p.m., they stopped at another red light. The car pulled up with two women and Tupac inviting them to go to the club. At 11:15 p.m., a white Cadillac driven by unknown passengers pulled up to the right side of the sedan, fired 12 to 13 shots at Tupac. One in the chest, one in the pelvis, one in the right hand, and one in his thigh. And the one that hit him in his chest actually ricocheted into his right lung. Now Tupac was riding alongside Knight, and although Knight swore that a bullet actually hit his head, this was later contradicted by hospital records, and it was shown that he was hit by a bullet fragment or a bullet simply grazed him. But he also had to go to the hospital to treat whatever wounds he had. Now when this incident occurred, Tupac did not go straight to the hospital. Actually drove the car 1 mile down where the incident occurred, even though he had a flat tire, and they were pulled over by patrol, who then alerted the paramedic. Pac was fatally wounded when police arrived at the scene, and he was later transported to the University Medical Center. Doctors said that he was in and out of consciousness, he was heavily sedated, he was breathing through a ventilator and a respirator, he was placed on life support, and he was actually put under a coma because he wouldn't stay in his bed. It's just like the first time he got shot 5 times and he left the hospital bed after 3 hours against doctor's orders. So it's kind of crazy to hear that once again he was repeatedly trying to get out of bed and was forced to go into a coma. Now there were a few signs during his 6 days at the hospital that would have led you to believe that he might have had a chance to survive this. Now, he eventually was resuscitated and survived several surgeries, one including the removal of his failed right lung because of that bullet that hit him in the chest and ricocheted into his right lung. He got through the critical phase of his physical therapy. Doctors said that he had a 50% chance of making it, and he was making 13% recovery. But he eventually went to cardiac arrest due to his respiratory failure. Mother made the decision to stop treatment and to no longer resuscitate him. Because I mean, at this point you're watching your son suffer, and I can only imagine how hard it was for her to make that decision. And so in the University Medical Center in the critical care unit on September 13th, 1996 at age 25, 4:03 Pacific time, Tupac Amaru Shakur had officially passed away. Now, Knight was released the day after the shooting, and he simply told officers that he heard something but he didn't see anything. And of course, you know that that's the street code. And knowing who Tupac was and his negative but truthful depiction of law enforcement, you know, police weren't in a rush to save him or to figure out who shot him or to give him any types of protection. And while Tupac was in the hospital, one of his closest friends, music video director Gobi, he actually got news from somebody in the marketing crew of Death Row Records saying that they were receiving multiple phone calls from the shooters who claimed that they were going to go to the hospital and finish the job. And when Gobi called the police and told them this information, the police department said, we do not have enough police officers to send over and protect Tupac. Now, the shooters never came to the hospital, but it's just like, you know, in the case that they did, the police department apparently didn't have enough officers and no one was going to protect him anyway. But of course, you know, that's just me feeling like, knowing who Tupac was, they didn't want to protect him anyway. My lighting might have changed because my camera died, but we are back and we are back. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the conspiracies surrounding Tupac's death. Now, one thing I want to point out is Suge Knight. And I feel like if some of you guys have been following along, it sounds like there would be some conspiracy around him, especially because of the fact that he was there when Tupac got shot. It already sounds a little weird that he told Tupac to come to Las Vegas and he told him to ride in his car. Actually said that he believes he was a target that night because someone was coming for his CEO status at Death Row. Like I said before, Tupac did have some issues with the Death Row records and was trying to leave them. Tupac's mom actually stated that he never really seen a lot of the money coming out from his albums that he provided. So it's just like, you know, it's always a big thing when an artist tries to leave a company, especially an artist with as much revenue as Tupac. Now, of course, many believe that this was just a rival gang incident, regarding the fact that just a few hours before this incident happened, 2 hours before, their entourage just jumped Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, who was a part of the rival gang. Of course, you know, he retaliated. Even though it was believed that Anderson was the one who pulled the trigger, the police officers lacked heavy in the investigation. They only interviewed him one time and it was very brief. So it's like overall the police wasn't thorough in their investigation and they mismanaged the case as well. They also failed to follow up with a lot of witnesses that even spotted the Cadillac. Some even alleged that Biggie was the one who had some involvement with the shooting, considering that they were big time rivals in the rap game. However, Biggie did come out and deny these allegations. Him and his family said that he was actually recording a song while this happened. Now, going back to Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, former gang member Keith D, who was a part of the Southside Crips, came out and did an interview with Vlad TV and basically kind of stated what happened that night. So according to him, he was in that car that night with Orlando and Orlando was the one who pulled the trigger. Now, of course, he doesn't outright say this, but you know how gangs operate. They're not going to say what happened. They're not going to outright snitch, even though he kind of basically said what happened. So for anyone wondering, like, if he was a part of the gang, why is he talking now? Well, he was a former member and he had cancer during the time of the interview, so to him it's just like he had nothing to lose, and it wasn't a regular gang drive-by. I'm sure he has been in more than one, but of course we all know why this one was significant and the whole world wanted to know what happened. Now, of course, there are some people who still believe Tupac is alive. Some people believe that he actually dropped hints in his music before he passed away. In his 2002 release Better Days, he actually says, "Expect me like you expect Jesus to come back." And then people also looked at the Killuminati album cover and thought, well, you know, he's gonna resurrect back in this bitch, I guess. He had a music video for Toss It Up where he's seen wearing Penny Hardaway sneakers that weren't released to the public yet until after his death. But of course, being a celebrity, companies are gonna send you products before they were released, so this doesn't really say anything either. One of the popular controversies surrounding Tupac's death is that people believed he fled to Cuba and went into hiding or is just chilling with his godmother, Afeni Shakur, who was a member of the Black Liberation Army. Now, she hid to Cuba after being convicted for first degree of a state trooper in a police shootout. She actually escaped prison and went to Cuba, being granted political asylum, so she's literally safe in Cuba chilling. Now, Suge also joined in on the he might still be alive because according to him, when he went to the hospital, him and Tupac were apparently laughing and he seemed fine to him. And there's also, of course, photos and people who even have the same name of Tupac, but it's just like from his interviews, it seemed like he wouldn't be that type of person to go into hiding.
Fear is stronger than love. Remember that. Fear is stronger than love. All the love I gave didn't mean nothing when it came to fear. But I'm a soldier, I always survive. I constantly come back. You know what I mean? Only thing that can kill me is death. That's the only thing that'll ever stop me is death. And even then, my music will live forever.
One, he got shot before, and two, he had a lot of plans for this world, and he himself said that nothing could stop him but death. But mostly, many of these controversies lie surrounding the police investigation or lack thereof and the Death Row record label. Child, there's really no ending to this video, but just the fact that, like, I wish this man was still alive. I hate to say that he literally died over something that he was kind of fighting to stop. And he really just was a bright light that this world needed. Like, it's just crazy. Like, it's fucked up. But I really want to know what you guys think about this. What do you guys think about this video? What do you guys think about Tupac's life? What do you guys think about his death? Do you guys have any theories of your own? To me, it just seems like this really might have been, you know, a gang rivalry, but it's also like something that's very typical. I mean, if looking at Label and the police and the investigation and Baby Lane, the gang rivalry, I mean, it seems like there was just a lot of shit going on. But I most importantly want to say rest in power to Tupac Amaru Shakur. Like, there really hasn't been anyone like him in the rap game. And he's somebody that everybody can agree was a legend. And when you are a legend, you don't really die, but you live on through your work. And, you know, you're still here. His mother, Afeni, actually passed away as well a few years ago. So it's just like, it's just really sad. But that includes the first video of Friday Night Crimes, bitch. But I hope you guys really did enjoy. I hope you guys learned something new. And please leave your thoughts and comments down below. Follow me on Instagram and on Snapchat at h.chrissyy, 2 S's, 2 Y's. I love and appreciate you guys. And I'll see y'all in my next video. Bye, guys.
Every time I speak, I want the truth to come out. You know what I'm saying? Every time I speak, I want to shiver. You know, I don't want them to be like, they know what I'm going to say because it's polite. They know what I'm going to say. And even if I get in trouble, you know what I'm saying? Ain't that what we're supposed to do? I'm not saying I'm going to rule the world or I'm going to change the world, but I guarantee that I will spark the brain that will change the world.
Someone said, where do you see Tupac 10 years from now? You said, hey, I just want to be alive. That's real for you.
That's so real. I made a metamorphosis. I'm a new person today because I used to strongly and honestly, I feel like I could represent my generation so much because I honestly did not care whether I lived or died. But now, I cannot die with people thinking I'm a rapist or a criminal. I can't leave until this shit's straight. You know, I'm not suicidal. I can't go until y'all really know what time it is. And then after that, boom, it's all over. And we can see, you know, how this shit fall. But that's how it is. And the reason being is because if I can't live free, if I can't live with the same respect as the next man, I don't want to be here. I always been a fighter, always been a soldier, always been a struggler. Can't nothing stop me but death itself.
Yeah, you know, I think it's going to work. I think it'll work out. But I always wanted to make a book out of my life, like a fairy tale. Raised by the Black Panthers and strung out. See the God, see the God, see the God.